motor for M, motor nerve supply supplies the 10 muscles of the larynx. And sensory nerve coming to the larynx, what it will supply? Because there is no any skin as far as, so the sensory nerve will supply the mucous membrane of the speech. Because mucous membrane, we have seen the ciliated is very, very sensitive. The cilia touched by this, we got immediately cough reflex. Why it is possible? Because mucous membrane is having a sensory nerve supply. So that is how we do the fourth part, that is the nerve supply of the larynx. So one is the motor and second is the sensory. Now the motor nerve supply, all the muscles of the larynx, they are supplied by recurrent laryngeal nerve, except cricothyroid, which is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve. So this should be the answer. Anybody asks you, like the definition of the physics, you can't change a single word. That underline it, all the muscles of the larynx are supplied by a recurrent laryngeal nerve, except cricothyroid supplied by external laryngeal nerve. Same as you have done in the tongue. All the muscles of the tongue, extrinsic and extrinsic, are supplied by hypoglossal, except palatoglossal, which is supplied by the accessory branch of the pharyngeal plexus. So this is a fixed words for 2 or 3 occasions where we can't change a single word, except word has to be used. And this recurrent laryngeal nerve is again a branch of the vagus nerve. I have told you vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve. It goes from the jugular foramen with 9th, 10th and 11th, descend into the neck, into the carotid sheath. Medial is the internal carotid artery and common carotid artery. Laterally lies the internal jugular vein. So this nerve is sandwiched between them. So it passes in the anterior triangle, embedded in the carotid sheath, and it goes into the thorax. And in the thorax it passes behind in the posterior mediastinum on either side of the esophagus, and it forms the esophageal plexus, which supply the smooth muscles of the outer longitudinal and inner circular muscles of the 25 centimeter long esophagus. Along with the esophagus, it will enter into the abdomen through the esophageal opening of the diaphragm, which lies at the level of T10. And after entering into the abdomen, it goes around the root of the celiac plexus, which lies 1 centimeter below the aortic opening at the level of T12 vertebra. And it will contribute the parasympathetic fibers to the celiac plexus. So that is the course and termination of the vagus nerve. So while it is in the anterior triangle, it gives 2 branches, the superior laryngeal nerve, just at the level of thyroid membrane. The superior laryngeal nerve is given by vertical vagus nerve. And there is a difference between the right and left recurrent laryngeal nerve. Why this question is important, again and again asked? Only because of the difference in the right and left. So this is superior laryngeal nerve. It divided into 2 branches, that is the internal laryngeal nerve and external laryngeal nerve. Internal laryngeal nerve pierces the thyroid membrane along with the superior laryngeal artery and superior laryngeal vein, and after entering into the thyroid membrane, it divides into 2 branches, ascending and descending. The ascending branch will supply the mucous membrane in the adjoining area. The descending branch supplies the mucous membrane of the quadrangular membrane above the vocal cords. So that is the course of the internal laryngeal nerve. The external laryngeal is called external because it remains outside. And one nerve, one muscle. This is the same external laryngeal nerve which accompanies the superior thyroid artery, which is help in the ligation as away from as possible from the thyroid gland to save this nerve. So that is how we do the internal and external laryngeal nerve. Now comes the recurrent laryngeal nerve. It is also the branch of the vagus nerve, but with a difference of right and left side. We have done the thorax, we know the sternal angle. At the sternal angle, arc of the aorta start and arc of the aorta ends. And arc of the aorta has got three branches. On right side, right brachiocephalic artery. We divide into right common carotid and right subclavian artery. Is it clear? But on the left side, left subclavian artery is the direct branch of the arc of the aorta. Another branch is the left common carotid is the direct branch. That is the difference. Now this recurrent laryngeal nerve arises on the right side. Right recurrent laryngeal nerve, it arises in the neck, just above the first rib. First rib is the start of the thorax. So just above the first rib, it gives a recurrent laryngeal nerve and it goes upward. Why it is called recurrent? Because it is coming from below upward. And it goes upward. On lateral part of the tracheoesophageal groove. So posteriorly there is a esophagus, anteriorly there is a trachea. In between the two pipes, windpipe and food pipe, there lies a groove. This groove is called tracheoesophageal groove. Content of this tracheoesophageal groove is number 1, recurrent laryngeal nerve. Number 2, inferior laryngeal artery and inferior laryngeal vein. So in this groove, this recurrent laryngeal nerve moves upward because this is the only nerve to supply the muscles and muscles of the larynx where they are present posteriorly. Only there is one anterior muscle which has already got their nerve supply. All the muscles posteriorly lying, they are waiting for the nerve supply to give. So this is the why it is present here anatomically in the tracheoesophageal groove, and this nerve reaches the posterior part of the larynx. And here it will supply all the muscles because they are all available posteriorly. But the course you have to write down whenever a question comes. On right side, this recurrent laryngeal arises in the lower part of the neck, and it winds around to go to reach the tracheoesophageal groove. It goes behind the right subclavian artery, and hence it forms a loop, and because of this loop formation is called ansa subclavia. Ansa means loop. Ansa subclavia because subclavian artery it formed. Ansa subclavia, and then it comes and then it supplies all the muscles. But on the left recurrent laryngeal, the course is different. The left recurrent laryngeal nerve, no doubt, is the branch of the vagus nerve, but this nerve arises in the thorax. So the length of the left recurrent laryngeal nerve is longer than the right laryngeal nerve. Here it arises in the thorax, and this recurrent laryngeal nerve passes below the arc of the aorta, and then it reaches the tracheoesophageal groove. Rest of the course is the same. Is it clear? So it winds around the arc of the aorta, left recurrent laryngeal nerve, but right remains the same. So that is how to write the question of the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Then sensory nerve supply of the larynx. Two nerves are there to supply the mucous membrane. One is called the internal laryngeal nerve, other is the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So recurrent laryngeal nerve is a mixed nerve supplying the muscles of the larynx as well as the mucous membrane. But the internal laryngeal nerve, which has come inside the larynx, it is the only sensory nerve. It supplies the mucous membrane, but level you have to remember. The internal laryngeal nerve supplies the mucous membrane above the vocal folds, and mucous membrane below the vocal cords. Below the vocal cord, this whole of the mucous membrane lining inside the trachea and inside the lower part of the larynx is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So vocal cords are the medial borders of the, so here you can see the medially there are present two vocal cords, V shape. So they are the medial ends of the vocal cords. So they are the medial border of the cricovocal membrane, and above it also there is lying lateral to this, there are also two folds are there. They are the vestibular fold or the lower border of the quadrate membrane. So this specimen I have specifically made for you to show everything. I have never made any model earlier, but larynx eye appears to be very difficult part of the anatomy. So that's why in order to easify and make it more easier, I have made the specimen so that you can easily understand. It is about 100 times bigger than your larynx. 100 times. Or you can say you are seeing the histology of the larynx. 100 time magnification. So that you should be crystal clear what are the muscles and what are the cartilages and how they are arranged. So the level is the vocal cords. Above the vocal cord, the arterial supply, sensory nerve supply, venous drainage, lymphatic drainage, everything is different. Why it is different? Answer lies in the embryology. Because the development of the larynx above the vocal cord is from the different source, and below the vocal cord is from the different source. They are from the 4th and 6th pharyngeal arches. Now you are doing the development of the neck, that is the pharyngeal arches. Have you finished or no? So you have not finished, so we won't be keeping the development or the embryology of the head and neck in your coming midterm.